Welcome to the gold standard of podcasts for the gold standard of drivers. This is the Liquid Trucking Podcast with your host, Marcus Bridges.
What's up, everybody, and welcome into episode 90 of the Liquid Trucking Podcast. I am your host, Marcus. Thank you so much for being here today. Episode 90 sounds like a real fever dream, I'll be honest with you. When we first started this little engine that could, we had no idea how long it would go or if it would go, and here we are 90 episodes later with all of you out there that are listening to thank. If you guys weren't clicking on this podcast every week and checking out what we've got to offer, we wouldn't be doing it. So from the bottom of my heart, thank you for getting us to 90 episodes. As we creep on 100, I'm still taking your suggestions in the inbox, podcast@liquidtrucking.com, or my own cell phone if you have the number. What do you want to hear on your 100th anniversary episode? Who do you want to hear? You want to play some games? Do you want to talk to drivers? Do you want to talk to management? You guys get your suggestions into me. And as I've been known to pay for suggestions in the currency that is Drive for Gold points, that offer still stands. So please do send me the suggestions. Once again, podcast@liquidtrucking.com. For everybody that isn't at the website right now listening to this podcast, the website landing page is podcast.liquidtrucking.com. Head on over there, check out all the episodes, find out more about everything that we're talking about, and we're always sharing up photos, making galleries and stuff like that. I still, even though this was last week's episode, will say we're going to be accepting pictures of your off-time whips, your rides, your project cars, your tractors that you're restoring, your motorcycles. Let's see some chrome and get it up there at podcast.liquidtrucking.com so you guys can all check it out and maybe make some new friends just like Dusty and Corey did last week on the show live. Today, I don't have a ton of time to get to what we're talking to today because a little peek behind the curtain here into podcast land. Sometimes I record these segments chronologically, meaning I will record the intro and then I'll have the drivers on and I'll record the middle segment and then I'll wait and I'll wrap it up at the end by recording the outro, and it's ABC. Other times, we throw that whole thing out the window and we record with the people that we can get when we can get them. So, at this juncture, I am actually in the future. I know everything that's happened in the interview that you guys are about to hear. And I got to tell you, buckle up. Well, you should be buckled up anyway if you're rolling. But if you're sitting, you might want to buckle up anyway because this is a really good one and it's a high-energy interview. And today we're kind of focusing again on something that we haven't talked about in probably a couple of months at this point, maybe even longer. And I shouldn't neglect it. I'll give myself a slap on the hand for that. But we're talking about staying healthy while being a truck driver. Maybe starting your health journey, maybe continuing your health journey, maybe picking up some new habits and getting rid of some old ones. And the best way I feel like we can talk about this, I have Dr. Mark Manera on all the time. We give you all the tips. We talk about it. And he likes to share some anecdotes with me of other drivers that he's worked with and their success stories, which are always awesome. They're never bad. They're always great stories, positive stories of just drivers overcoming problems in their health journey or overcoming obstacles is what I should say. Kicking the snowball down the hill, finding the momentum, getting the inspiration. We talk about all that stuff with Dr. Mark, okay? He's a great friend of the podcast. He's been on plenty of times. But one thing I know that drivers really enjoy is an anecdote from a driver. Rather than having Mark tell the story, let's hear from a dude that went through this, built his journey, exceeded, and is now thriving. And that's what we have for you today. You may remember a couple weeks back, we were joined by Michael Lombard from Truck Parking Club. He told us all about how cool truckparkingclub.com is. It's kind of that Airbnb for truck parking spots. The app is downloadable. It's on the website, podcast.liquidtrucking.com. You can go there, get signed up. And if you enter TankYanker20 as your promo code, you can save some money on that first booking. And please, if you are going to do that, don't forget, follow your standard operating procedures like you normally would. let your dispatcher know the whole lot, okay? So Michael was on the show talking about Truck Parking Club, and when we were off the air, he mentioned that, hey, I actually, I lost a ton of weight. I've done some marathons. I've done some Ironmans. I was in really bad shape when I was a truck driver, and if you ever want me to share that story, I would love to. And he also asked me, hey, do you know Dr. Mark Manera? And I was like, bro, I love Dr. Mark Manera. Well, these two guys happen to be friends. They've worked together. They're working on something right now that, while we can't talk about it in this interview, we will feature it on the podcast at a later date and turn you guys on to it so you can get involved with what they've got going on. But this interview coming up, like I said, it's a humdinger. I've got Dr. Mark Manera from Offshift. He's the founder of Offshift. He is a physical therapist. He is incredibly smart. He knows how to stay healthy. He knows how to work directly with drivers to stay healthy. He's been on this podcast quite a few times. And Michael Lombard from Truck Parking Club to tell his story about how he turned his health journey around and is now absolutely thriving. Guys, it's a high energy interview. There's a ton of info here, and I just want you to enjoy it because Mark and Michael, a couple of great guys in the trucking industry, and they also sort of shed a light on the fact that our network here on this little podcast that could is growing every single day. And again, the only thing we have to thank for that is you guys out there click and download every single week. Means the world to me. From the bottom of my heart, I thank you. As your fearless host, I will be here as long as you want it to go. Let's take it to 200, 300, 500, 1,000. Try me. All right, I've got the constitution for this type of thing. I haven't stopped talking since 2002. So if you think I'm running out of gas now, just give me the 1,000,000-word celebration and move me right on to my second million, baby. I am cooking with gas on this podcast, so thank you for cooking alongside with me. And please enjoy my interview with Dr. Mark Manera, founder of Offshift, and Michael Lombard from Truck Parking Club. Welcome back into the Liquid Trucking Podcast. I am so pumped for this next interview. I got a couple of guys joining me here, and, we're going to have another health-focused episode here. Already talked about it, and we love anecdotes. We love stories on this podcast because it's a way for us to show, hey, real drivers doing real things, and we talk about it on this podcast. There's real lessons that come from it. And a lot of drivers have talked to me about their health journey, how they're trying to be healthier and stay healthy out there on the road. And these two guys are perfect for this conversation. Please welcome longtime friend of the show. The only time I will call him a doctor today, as we are on a first-name basis and have been for a long time. Welcome back to Dr. Mark Manera, founder of Offshift. Mark, thanks so much for being here, man. It's always a pleasure to have you.
Yeah, Marcus, thank you so much for having me. I'm excited for the show, and I always love when we talk, and this one I'm even more pumped about because we get another friend on the podcast, and I'm excited to have a really good conversation.
Yeah, this is also so exciting because I feel like this is kind of evidence of the fact that our network at the Liquid Trucking Podcast is growing. We were fortunate enough a few weeks back to talk to Michael Lombard from Truck Parking Club, and I could have spent 3 hours talking to Michael, and fortunately, he's joined us again today, so I get to maybe cap off that 3 hours. Michael, so good to have you back, man. I know we barely scratched the surface of all the things that we have to talk about last time, so it's just awesome to have you back here for a second go at it, man.
No, I'm honored to be here, and I'm stoked to be here with Dr. Mark Manera. Somebody, whenever I feel like, I think 7 days a week, I'm always bringing up Mark in conversation to somebody, and this is, not to boost any egos or fangirl too much, but like a lot of people here in Austin, people I socialize with in the fitness community, they ask me about they ask me a lot about what I do, and it's so to explain what I do is crazy because I work full time at Truck Parking Club, and then I also coach part time. I'm a fitness coach and nutrition coach, and then there's this entire mission, this driver health initiative that I've been on, and so I'm always talking about I described Mark and I as like we're like the Fellowship of the Ring. Me, Mark, and another gentleman, Jeremy, and a few others out there. Trey Griggs, I'll shout out their names. Where we're kind of all out, spread out throughout the country, kind of all solving this, this mission, quote, mission impossible of, getting the ring back to Mordor. And with us, this mission has to do with, making, getting trucking from worst to first in health and fitness. So I'm stoked to be here.
Well, I love the movie references. My wife is a gigantic Lord of the Rings fan. She has like a 3-foot tall statue of the Balrog in her art studio. So I get all the references, and I'm going to put liquid trucking in the realm of like the Riders of Rohan, okay? We're the guys out there on the horses. We're cruising, and we love to see the Fellowship pass by, help us out with the things that we've got going on. So pleasure to have you here today. I can't believe that I was able to bring that full circle, you guys. I started off with nothing there, and I was able to bring it back. So every now and then a blind squirrel finds a nut, okay? Let's talk about it a little bit here. Obviously, Mark joins us all the time when we're talking about being healthy out on the road. We give you guys tips. We tell anecdotal stories about some people that he's helped out. And this one, he's just been, Michael, you talked about fangirling over Mark a little bit. It kind of seems like Mark was in your corner, rooting you on during your health journey. And I want you to just start at the top here and kind of tell us real quick. We'll get into how you guys met actually later. I want to jump into the good stuff. I want to get into the story. Talk to me about how you got inspired and what was going on in your life when you decided to begin this health journey and take it to where it is today, Michael.
Absolutely, because meeting Mark was almost like somewhat. You can kind of boil it down to fate, and I'll get to it because it's just as much a part of the journey. Because during this journey became, this mission that I feel really called to do. But a little bit about myself to not keep it too long. But essentially, I grew up pretty active. I swam all my life, swam through high school. I was in the Marine Corps from 2008 2012. I served with Charlie Battery 110. I was in good shape in the Marines. I went to water survival instructor school. So, when it came to being in shape, I was always a part of something that would keep me in shape. And a lot of us are when we're younger, we're involved in stuff. I got out of the Marines in 2012. And, all of a sudden, that stuff goes away. I went to undergrad. I went to a place called the University of New Haven. I did play some club lacrosse, but again, it still kept me active. And I think I definitely was heavier in college than I was still in the Marines. It kept me active, but I still continued like the same lifestyle of maybe somebody from 18 to 21 through those college years. And really after I graduated in 2016, all aspects of health, wellness, fitness pretty much deteriorated. And I had no good habits. Like the Marine Corps doesn't really teach you good eating habits because you eat when you can. Things are done very quickly. College, kind of eating whatever I want. You're going to happy hour, you're going to bars, going to, XYZ, so I kind of grew up, always being able to quote, eat whatever I want. So I didn't really know any of these kind of good habits, nor was I receptive to it. So in 2016, things kind of fall off. I get one of my first jobs out of college. I'm working at Enterprise Rent-A-Car, which is high pace, customer service oriented sales job, real heavy on the company happy hours, all that stuff. And over the course of that couple years, it just became, it's never something I monitored. I didn't have a regular routine. I got really, really out of shape, really heavy. And, by 2018, I remember, I had looked, what had happened was what had transpired in 2018, I had gotten engaged. And so I knew that at some point something was going to have to change, but I still was in this mindset. And I still had this mindset similar to the Marines is I can lose weight quickly, because that would happen. In the Marines, you'd go on a field op and you'd come back 10, 15 pounds lighter. You'd go to the field for a week, 2 weeks, and you just hack weight off very easily. Same thing. I went to Afghanistan. I probably lost 20, 25 pounds, being overseas for 7 months. And so I was under this, predisposition. I could just lose weight very quickly. And I not long after I gotten engaged, what had happened was, so where I was a good friend of mine, very, very good friend of mine from my unit. He ended up passing away suddenly, and it totally took a lot of us. It was straight out of left field, and it was like a huge gut check for me. I couldn't believe it. I was in real I was in pretty bad disbelief. And the gentleman who lost, his name's Matt Brown, and he's an Alabama guy, corn-fed, but bodybuilder type, loved crushing big weights. Him and I used to bang weights in Afghanistan regularly. And so it hurt. It stung real bad. And I remember being in the bathroom one day, and I was like looking at my face in the mirror. I saw how my cheeks looked. I saw how my hands looked. I saw the scale had said 278 pounds. And at that point I was at like a crossroads. I was like, I can, like where I can either stay defeated, or I kind of asked myself, what would, if I could talk to Matt Brown again, what would be the conversation? What would he tell me? Like, what would he tell me to do right now and how I feel? And I kind of looked at that, and that's when I started moving forward. And at the time, so in 2017, I'd started working in a warehouse. So this is me kind of entering the industry. I was on the other side of the loading dock, worked in operations. I was doing a lot of inventory control, drove a forklift a lot, unloaded a lot of trucks, talked with drivers pretty often. And in 2018, I started turning around. How I started turning around was doing what I knew. So, and I chose the path of least resistance. So what I knew was, if you want to lose weight, you have to exercise. So I joined a gym that was, no matter what, there was 2 ways to get home from where I worked. And no matter what, I had to pass this gym, path of least resistance right there. And that's a really important point, is because if it's out of your way, if you've got to do really any extra, it's hard to be bought into it. So I joined it. It was group fitness. It was a CrossFit gym. And so I knew it's not like I was going to go there and I had no clue what I was doing. So I started by doing that. And after a couple months of being there, the coach who owned the place, he built a relationship with me. The one that he didn't have to do. He went out of his way. We became friends. And after a couple months in, he started talking to me about food. And at that point, after a couple months, is when I started. So, I didn't start tracking anything or doing anything. I just simply grocery shopped more. So I built this one habit of getting in regular daily intentional movement. After that became ironclad, where I was always going to go no matter what, then I just changed what I ate during the week. Instead of eating the lunch at work, the subs, the grinders, the pizza, all that stuff, like I was bringing my own food, not tracking anything. But because I was doing that, I was reducing how many calories I was eating. So that's habit number 2. And so I've got the movement in, I've got the food changing in, and, months continue to go by. And I ended up losing a decent amount of weight, about 40 or so-ish pounds before my wedding. Still not, near high school weight or the weight I was in the Marines, but, kind of back into college weight standpoint, something that looked definitely better. Definitely not unhappy at how I look at my wedding pictures. Although I look now and I'm like, man, if only I knew what I knew now, I could have locked in more.
Renew the vows, man. Have another photo shoot. It's that easy.
Exactly, which we may have to do. So flash forward, we get married, and this is important because I don't like to leave it out. But 5 weeks before my my wedding, I was actually offered a promotion to go be a store and warehouse manager in North Jersey. And at the time, I'm from Connecticut. And I knew what the job paid. I knew what it was worth, kind of knew what I was worth. And I negotiated for that salary, and I turned it down. But what I can tell you is, from the standpoint of being a veteran, and from the standpoint of, if this was in 2018 or 2017 and I was offered that same job, I think I would have taken it. And when it comes to military veterans, and this isn't talked about enough, is veterans are very much they're predisposed to being paid less in the workplace, because the job in the military, like, you are promoted because of time and service, time and grade. Like, you're promoted based off of merit, and when it is given to you, promotions are given, and then in the pay, you don't negotiate your pay in the military. Like, an E5 is paid what an E5 is made, and so, but in the real world, in the civilian workplace, it's quite different. There's salary negotiations. That's a conversation. If you want a raise, you a lot of times have to go and ask for it. If you want a promotion, you have to go and ask for it, so to speak. And so, if that was given to me me starting my fitness journey, I might have taken it thinking, oh, this was finally given to me, I've got to take it and run with it. But I knew what was best for me, and I credit because starting to change as I started to lose the weight, and I started to, get better personally. I started to value myself more. I saw that I was worth more than that job, and I ended up turning it down. Shortly after we got married, my wife and I, we basically decided that, we wanted to make a change. She was ready to leave Connecticut, hadn't lived out of state. So we moved to, we decided we're going to move to Texas. And in my mind, at that point, I had kind of refound some identity in me, and that identity being what I called myself on the internet since 2010, which is Lombard Trucking. Like I made a Twitter account, said pick a username, and I was like, I don't know what a username is, and I was like, perfect. I'm going to just call myself Lombard Trucking. And after having worked in the warehouse, I was like, I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna honor my family's legacy. When we moved to Texas, that was gonna be the plan. I'm gonna get my CDL. I'm gonna go over the road and see where it takes me, because I felt like I was called to do it. I wanted to just put my stick in it and go and do it. Now with that, as we were, as we moved, I remember having a conversation with my brother where he actually brought up the issue of health, and he was like, you've been on a good path. Now you're going to go into some place where some of the least healthy people are. It's very hard to stay in shape. My own grandfather, who drove for the original Lombard Trucking, he drove for over 30 years. He had his first heart attack at 50, and this is before I was born. He had his first heart attack, and he passed away in 2013, rooted in his heart disease and chronic disease from the lifestyle he was living. And so that kind of like really shook me. I was like, oh my God, I'm going to do something I really want to do. Am I going to go backwards? And because I knew at that point the group fitness was going to go away, the CrossFit's going to go away, and mind you, 2020, so we're in COVID, there's not a whole lot of gyms, but I still had a Peloton and I could ride my bike anywhere. Like you have a little bit more freedom and autonomy when you're not over the road. And I came to meet one of my biggest adversaries that the Marine Corps made me hate, which is running. And I said, I'm going to have to force myself into doing this. And while I was in CDL school, I would, go for these short 20, 30-minute runs. And I started to build, once again, a new habit. While I was in CDL school, I give a lot of credit to reading David Goggins' first book, Can't Hurt Me. Read it while I was in school. And I finished it while I was with my trainer. And reading that book told me, it quite literally flipped a switch in my brain to, this isn't about just staying healthy. I needed to be an outlier. Like like the entire message of the book and the Goggins story was like, you shouldn't just, survive. Like you should thrive. You should do the hardest things. If you're familiar with Goggins and some of his videos, you can kind of get it. But his book goes into really, really good detail, especially about time management, using your time, and how what being excellent looks like for your lifestyle. Because again, I can't be like an NFL player or anything. We don't have the same lifestyle. So there's no reason to demand me, a truck driver, to be as great as Patrick Mahomes or something like that. That's impossible. What does being the absolute best for your lifestyle? And the book really goes into that. And so I took what was given to me from that book, and through trucking, we have the electronic log. You can drive you have a 14-hour work clock. You can drive 11 hours a day in that 14-hour window. To get your hours back, you need a 10-hour break. So no matter what, I knew in my head, it was logged in me, where if all I needed to do was take 10 hours, I knew those 2 hours were mine. 2 hours is my time, where I could get 30 to 60 minutes of movement. I could cook a meal in 30 minutes or find something to eat, and then shower and go to sleep. At the same time, I did know at this point in my fitness, I was going to be sitting more. So I knew if I was going to get ahead of this, I was going to have to figure out how many calories I was taking in and how many I was burning. So I had, downloaded my Fitness Pal, and then I also downloaded the First Form Health and Fitness app, because that's one of the most important things. You're never going to manage your weight if you don't know those numbers. And over the course of 3 years of being over the road, I built that habit, utilizing the time that's realistic for a driver, and free time was spent running, cooking my food, making a little bit of content, sleeping, then driving. I was able to, it forced me to route plan better. I mean, I was grocery shopping on 30-minute breaks. You could pull into any Walmart. 34-hour resets, I grocery shopped. 34-hour resets are where I did long runs. And as I started running more and more, that's what made me want to start making my own content, which I started my own podcast to tell my story. So many of my friends are like, you're doing all this stuff, you're running, you're literally running as a truck driver. Who's doing that? You should be talking about it. And so I started talking about it. And along the way, as the more and more fit I got, the more and more I wanted to help because, well, I can't be the only one doing this. More people need to be doing this because if people are living unhealthy lifestyles, it's probably going to be taking years off their life. And through the podcast and through my own fitness is where I got to meet guys and because my show would go on LinkedIn, it would go on all these different platforms. I connected with so many people. It opened so many doors. So I got to meet guys like Mark, like-minded people who agreed that there's a huge issue out there with driver health. And then sidebar, again, the Goggins book is what inspired me to do crazy things. The 3 years I was over the road, I trained and I ran it in 5 full marathons.
Wow.
It was, which I believe I did it Austin, Missoula, Montana. I hauled a load to a marathon I took a load from Pryor to Spokane, Washington, and then I ran the Missoula Marathon. One in San Antonio. Austin was number 4, and then back to Missoula for a second one. And those were 5 marathons I did in 3 years because it became a priority. And over the time, more and more I learned.
Lombard's going to do the first ever in history truck stop marathon. He is going to run a marathon at a truck stop. That is going to happen, if not 2025, 2026. And I'm going to be there in person cheering him on and maybe running a couple of laps. I'm not committing to the full marathon, but
and your support, I'm sure, is greatly appreciated. I just did a little quick math. 146 miles encompasses 5 marathons there, just in case anybody was really wondering how far you went there, Michael. But that's amazing, man. And so I think you're just right towards the end of the story here. I'll let you continue after the marathons. Pick it up there.
Yeah, so along the way, again, making content opened so many doors, and I met so many, amazing people. It's what got me to the Mid-America Truck Show. It's probably the only reason why I went to the Mid-America Truck Show, where I got to meet so many people I've been engaging with in person, and going to shows like that and being involved in the community. The community is really what drove me to want to succeed more and double down. I don't want to leave out. I did own my own truck for about 18 months. I was leased on to a small carrier in Northwest Arkansas, and then I was leased on to Warren Transport out of Waterloo, Iowa, where I did specialized like step deck RGN with them. And so kind of rounding it up in May of 20, because, as I speak now, I work full time at Truck Parking Club. I transitioned off the road in 2023. Where what had happened was I was backed into at a truck stop. Truck parking can always find a way in any story. I was backed into it at a truck stop, and it was still drivable, but I had to get the truck fixed. I completed a load, brought the truck back. I was down for several weeks, and being down for several weeks, I did exactly what the Goggins mindset was. So I worked at a friend of mine's bar, worked security, checking IDs. I door dashed. And then that's when I was like, okay, if I'm down, if something really bad happens, when things are bad, you've got to double down on what you're good at, what's going good in life. That was my mindset. And I credit fitness for making me think that way. So I was like, what can I do? And so I made an account for the American Council on Exercise. I got my certification to be a fitness coach. And because I was like, I'm going to really lean into this, this driver health thing, like where I can at least be somewhat of a more like, how can I give myself some credentials so that way I'm not just some runner online telling you how to live. Like I needed a little bit of credentials into it. Now, while I was home, I was, there's an Orange Theory gym here in Austin, a studio. The studio manager and head coach were saying like we would love to have a guy like you here, like it's your energy and everything. And I was like, hey, that sounds really great, but I was like, but I have this expensive machine and business, so I was like, I don't think I could do it right now. I went back out during the summer of 2023 and I grinded. I stayed out basically all summer. I did go to one event, a CDL Life event, where I spoke on a driver panel, and a good friend of mine there. His name's Charles Gracie. He hosts on Road Dog Radio. He owned a recruiting company, and he told me, he's like, dude, I love your passion, your energy, like your stances on the industry. He's like, you ever think about getting into this? And he had told me he would love to have me on as a recruiter. So, 2 people offered me, I was offered 2 jobs. within a short span of time, I was hemorrhaging money. At the rates of stuff I was hauling in the spring weren't the same as they were over the summer, even for this oversized stuff. And conversation with my wife, she really wanted me back home too. It had been hard on her, holding down the house. And she's like, I think you should do this, and come home. We can figure it out later. So that's what I did. Going into fall 2023, I transitioned off the road. I worked as a recruiter for Hot Seat Services, and then I just continued to. But I knew that coming off the road, and this is what's really important, is coming off the road. If I was going to do that, I still have the honor and integrity of doing the job, but I needed to double down on myself if I was going to be the guy that I want to be for this industry. I need to double down on who I am. And where 5 marathons as a trucker is incredible, how can I take this further? And that's when in 2024, this idea of Ironman came into mind. And I needed to really test my limits and challenge myself. And that's 2024 is where I went from, 0 triathlons to Ironman in 6 months. I went back to back for my second full distance 6 months later. And a lot of that is definitely where Mark and I started to talk and engage a lot more because I raised money for a nonprofit called Project 61 that's pretty dedicated to solving this driver health epidemic.
That's such an amazing story. And, Mark, as I listen to Michael tell the story, I see you nodding along and kind of, emphasizing some of the things. And we've had so many good conversations about truckers staying healthy on this podcast. And what I'm finding when I listen to Michael's story is I'm going, yeah, Mark and I talked about that. Yeah, we've talked about that. Some of the things, he said path of least resistance, and you really kind of perked up a little bit. What a genius idea to just force yourself to drive past the gym. You're going to have to make a decision every single day and look yourself in the mirror if you don't go, and you're going to have to live with that. And, psychologically, that's kind of got to be one of the best things you can do, right? Just that we talk about baby steps is another thing. 20-minute runs, 30-minute runs. All of a sudden we're into marathons. Talk about that a little bit and how you kind of see some parallels between Michael's story and what we've talked about in the past, Mark.
Well, first off, Marcus, how am I supposed to follow that? I mean, come on, listen to this guy. I mean, I'm inspired every time I hear Lombard's story, and I think when I hear his story, there's a few things that come to mind for me personally. The first things are exactly of like the on the ground habits and behaviors that are necessary, especially for an over the road driver to be successful and set yourself up to get on this journey and stay on this journey consistently. But I think the other piece of it that like shined so strongly through, and I think as I've gotten deeper into my health and wellness journey as both me personally, but then also me as a healthcare professional and working with more and more drivers and just people about making changes to their health, is the mindset and the mental piece of it. And you can just see through that whole journey the mindset shift that happened. And I don't think every single driver needs to be David Goggins, but that might resonate with a lot of people. But what I do think is what I continue to see when I work with more and more drivers is that the biggest enemy and the biggest barrier that we all have is what we have upstairs between our ears. And for the first like step towards getting some wins under our belt is like, how do you set yourself up in a starting position so you can show yourself that you can do it and get some wins and like give yourself a thumbs up and be like, okay, I'm not going to be my worst enemy. I can actually do this, and I can do this consistently, and I can do this in my environment. And I think, Michael's example of kind of his story and how he did it was a perfect example of how to do it. And, obviously every driver, every health and wellness journey has its different flavors, but I think some of the things that he mentioned there are really like high level traits that, every successful story trickles in there.
Absolutely. And you talked about Michael's self-value and sort of looking yourself in the mirror and turning that job down in New Jersey that you probably would have taken a couple years prior because of the fact that you've developed more value and self-worth in yourself. These little wins, at least in my life, are key to that. For me, I'll tell you just an anecdotal story. I've been a drummer for 27 years. I've played since I was a little kid. I know I'm good at it. I know I don't need to necessarily practice anymore. I still have the chops, but I formed a band here a few months ago, and I had not played in 6-8 months, you guys. And I was I was down. I mean, I've always been confident in my abilities. I've joined a band. Yeah, sure. That takes some confidence. But man, I was terrified getting behind the kit for the first couple times with those guys. And, you know, here we are 4 or 5 months later. I'm as confident as I've ever been. I feel great, but I needed a couple wins. And even if those wins were just them looking at me and saying, hey, nice job on the chorus, or me being able to go, hey, I think that sounded pretty good. You stack those little wins up every single day, and all of a sudden you're turning down a job that you feel like, hey, I'm better than this. Like you've got that in you. And Michael, I love to hear how the confidence grew, and I'm sure that's not something that stops, right? That's something that just continues to stack in perpetuity until the habits break.
No, for sure. I love diving into this because identity, when it comes, especially when it comes to military veterans, and I've got a good friend of mine, Matt Johnson. He's an ultra runner he's very dedicated to veterans getting back into the fitness community, and it's kind of where how veterans can refine a lot of their purpose, because that's large in part what I believe I was suffering from, during a large part of my 20s, was this identity crisis. People don't seem to realize is that when you're in the military, it's not just this, there's this idea of band of brothers, this brotherhood that you're in, but this is for really anybody. This is high school, college. It's the same reason why I think everybody falls off, and it has everything to do with being alone, and then there's a lack of community. So whether you go to college or you join the military, is for most of your life, you are always with people. You're always with them. And especially in the military, like you always have a roommate. You like, no matter what, like wherever you're at, unless you're married and you're with your family, but you're still with your unit a lot. And then all of a sudden, when that's over, that's it. You're by yourself, and that becomes a huge recipe for disaster. When it comes to finding that confidence again, because as you said, you drummed for several decades. You fell off. You were nervous going back into it. You're like, oh my God, I have to start over. This is why Goggins' book is so important. And Mark's right. Not everybody needs to be Goggins. I tell drivers all the time, hey, you don't need please, you don't need to run marathons. Less than 1% of the world has ever done it. Like it's not for everybody. It's just something I chose because I started to love it. But whatever that could be for them is kind of where they should go. But in Goggins' book, he specifically talks about a certain time. I mean, he had to go through Navy SEAL Hell Week 3 times. So three different times within the course of a year. And so, and again, Navy SEAL training is hard enough as it is. And so he successfully went through Hell Week, and had to do it a third time. So this mentality of, in the book, he describes it as day one, week one. And when you view every day as day one and week one, like I mean, I couldn't imagine, I was in the Marines, sure. Could I go through Marine Corps boot camp again? Yeah, I could go through it, but SEAL training is something else. And to have to go through Hell Week for SEAL training 3 times, starting back over, having already done it, to me, in my mind, that sounds like quite literally some of the most impossible stuff. And so when I read that, from after hearing his entire story of his upbringing, you're like, it really makes you feel a certain way of, wow, am I really complaining about having to get back into drumming, something I love to do? Am I really complaining? Like, I used to be a Marine, I used to be in good shape, and I'm going to complain because running a mile now hurts because I haven't done it in a long time. And when you have the day one, week one mentality, to where, okay, so say you're in your 30s or you're 40 years old, and you're like, well, running a mile hurts. Okay, then don't run a mile. Like, walk a mile, walk a half mile. Like, it is about the small goals daily. Like a 5-minute mile and a 15-minute mile are still a mile, no matter how you drum it up. And when you could just dial it back to those small goals daily again, and that's what led to me turning down that job. Is as I started getting involved in a community again, I started to find purpose, where this purpose was circumvented around, I'm trying to get better. And all of a sudden I viewed myself better. So I was like, this job isn't worth my time anymore. Where at another point, I would have looked at the job as like a godsend, like, oh my God, this opportunity, like somebody actually values me. But the truth is, I had to start learning to value myself again, to be able to turn down that job, because really I was being offered that job and offered it for the pay I was offered because it was assumed I would work harder for less money in that role compared to other people they were looking at for that job. But those small goals daily, the littlest things like just, and it could be as simple as getting X grams of protein per day, getting X number of steps per day. One thing, you make that one thing. And if you're just able to do that for 5 of 7 days, 4 of 7 days, and all of a sudden, out of 4 of 7 days over the course of month, over 4 weeks, you've done it for X number of days, all of a sudden you've won the entire month because you've done it more times than you didn't. And when you do it, you realize in that month, you're going to start to feel better. You're going to start to be doing more. When you complete the goal, you're going to want to complete the goal again. And then once the habit is built, once you've done those goals, you're looking for the next thing. And this is what happened. I mean, I tell people this often. I signed up for my second marathon before I ran my first.
You're a crazy individual. That's all I have to say to you, man. That is a crazy fact.
Because you just want to raise the bar, and we see this in trucking. People succeed in trucking after so many times. What gives them the confidence that then they can go out and buy their own truck and run their own business? Because they've done the work over the course of so many years, and they're like, I've built relationships. I know people. Like I know this broker. I know this guy's. I've been doing this for 10 years. I think I'm going to start my own company. And it's the same thing with your health. Like you become an owner operator. You start your own trucking company because you built these awesome habits and relationships. You're like, well, I can get in a business for myself and put my own name on the truck. I'm going to do it. And your health and fitness is the exact same thing. You got to start one and then gain the experience by doing the right things. And then all of a sudden, oh, I'm signing up for a 5K. All of a sudden, oh, I'm doing the 10K.
One of my favorite stories that Mark has ever told on this podcast, and I bring it up, I'm sure I've brought it up almost every single time you've joined me here, Mark, and that is the driver with the 24 Pepsi a day habit, and you talked him into one Pepsi Max a day. And, I see the baby steps that we always talk about just absolutely peppered through Michael's story here. Do you see through your work with drivers, Mark, kind of that psychological barrier of getting over that first hump? Is it a thing where all you got to do is kick this snowball down the hill, because once it gets some momentum, you almost can't stop it?
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest thing that I see is actually just the taking the leap to start and join the program, and then also the lack of accountability. And that leads into for us, it's the accountability coach, but then also kind of to Lombard's point, it's the community, right? And so, do you need a health coach that's calling you and doing that, or do you just need a couple of buddies that are on the same journey as you, and you all are in a group chat and hopefully can be positive influences on each other? And what I've seen is that a lot of the times the first biggest ceiling that needs to be broken for drivers is just the mindset that it's possible to do out on the road. And I think Lombard's example, and every single driver listening to this has a friend or knows someone who has made a huge change for their health out on the road. And that should break that ceiling right there, that it's possible.
Yeah.
And then it's from there, you taking the first step, and that might be looking down at your cup holder and saying, do I really need a 44-ounce Pepsi today, or should I just go with a Diet Pepsi, or should I go with water, or should I not maybe switch between water and soda today instead of just going all soda, or looking at even just what I'm ordering at the truck stop or at the fast food next to it and saying, is there a healthier option anywhere I go? And it's like those individual decisions one by one throughout the day, where you don't have to change all of them. And you also don't have to hate your life to live a healthy one, but you just need to, like Lombard said, commit to saying, all right, I'm going to make breakfast a win every single day. And I'm going to show up, wake up excited to make my breakfast really healthy. And I'm going to do that. And if I can do that, that means my day is good. And I'm like, it's a win. And I'm going to do that for the next week. All of a sudden, okay, this is becoming a little bit easier. Oh, I kind of like this new routine. I got to do it for 2 weeks. Oh, this is now just my breakfast. My identity is I eat a healthy breakfast. Okay, well, now let me start working on this other area. And the funny thing that I always notice, and it trickled into Michael's story as well, is that when people start making changes, is it doesn't just I'm boxed in this one change, because what happens is you start making this change and then you also start looking at other areas of your life and you're like, oh, okay, well, I'm trying to eat healthier. I might as well exercise, or I'm exercising. I don't want to, ruin my exercise by going and eating this huge plate of nachos every single day. I better change my diet here as well. And without even having to think about it, starting one habit and building that momentum actually now starts to like trickle out into other areas of your life. And then when that one habit becomes automatic and then you stack something on top of it, now that trickle starts to continue to happen. And then when you do that for 5, 10, 15 years, all of a sudden you're like a completely different human. And I think what happens where a lot of people feel like failed is that they try to make all of these changes completely overnight and like throw everything away in their pantry, flip their whole life over, 180 degrees and like say, I'm starting this huge diet tomorrow. I'm done with this. Yeah, this sucks. I don't want to feel like this anymore. And they just set themselves up to fail
Yeah.
because they start too big. And you have some one-off people that they can handle that, and that is their story, and that's amazing. But I think a lot of people, once they're in their 30s, 40s, 50s, have a handful of memories of trying to make these diet changes that, if you really think about it, you set yourself up to fail because it was just unrealistic. But in your head, you categorize those as failures. And then now, every time you're thinking about your health, subconsciously or even consciously, you're like, I already failed. What's the point of this? Already failed. What's the point of that? And it's like, well, were you driving on a road, or were you trying to drive through, a jungle with your truck? Well, you drove through a jungle and there's not room for your semi truck to get through. So is that a failure on the health side of things, or was that just a failure of like the road you were trying to go down?
Sure. I mean, you're giving me flashbacks of when everybody was packing around bags of hot dogs in hot dog water when Atkins was popular. We were driving in a jungle at that point in time. We were hitting rocks and trees. We needed a course reset. That's fine.
But by the way, the jungle semi truck was I just made that one up. I don't know if that's
Nice
the
job.
best metaphor, but you got the point across.
I did, absolutely, man. And let me talk about this in a way that maybe is going to flip this whole thing on its head and look at the other side of it. We talk about what's possible. Sometimes you have to, Mark, you said you got to convince yourself that it is possible to be healthy out there on the road, OTR, grinding, working 60, 70 hours a week, piling up the miles. It's hard to figure out that that's possible. It's hard to convince yourself. Look at it from the other side. What is possible, and you know it's possible because you've seen it, you've heard it, you've had a friend, heart disease, diabetes, all of that stuff, stroke, heart attack. You guys know somebody out there. If you're listening to this podcast and you're an over-the-road truck driver or a regional guy, you know somebody or you know of somebody that has either passed away or had a major health event in their seat or in their sleeper or in the truck stop, anywhere. It happens every single day. And not to be grim about it, not to say that's happening to everyone, but if you're having trouble with that motivation and kicking that snowball down the hill, that's one that you know is true. You don't have to ask any questions about it. The stories are out there. And I made a change here recently, actually last week. I got a buddy who, he told me I got to go to a funeral. And I said, oh no, what happened? And he said, well, seemingly healthy dude, 36 years old, just had a heart attack and is gone. And he said, be careful with the energy drinks, fellas. He was a 2-3 a day guy and kind of higher energy to begin with, and the heart just didn't hold up. I did a little bit of self-assessment, Michael, and I looked in my fridge and realized I was at least a 1-a-day guy and maybe twice a day guy. And I went 7 days cold turkey. I've made the rule that I'm not having any more than 1 in 3 days. I'm in a 40-year-old husk of my former fighting weight self, and I need to realize that some things just can't go on anymore. And I feel like, as Mark was saying, and as I brought up before, all of these things permeate your story, Michael, throughout. And I've seen you get pumped about some of the stuff that Mark's been saying. So I want to kick it back to you real quick for just any thoughts that you've had while we've been talking here.
Yeah, because when people look at weight loss, it's complicated, and Mark really summed it up perfectly. Like you can't win if you've defeated yourself already, and the fad diets and sometimes the restrictions and that are where people get set up. They believe again, you can't make them besides the lottery, and you can describe the lottery as maybe some sort of magic surgery. Besides the lottery, you can't make $1 million in 6 months, or something like that, unless you find the next cure for cancer or the fountain of youth, something along those lines. Like when it comes to how much money you make, like say you're a driver and you make $100,000 a year, it takes you a year to earn that $100,000. You have to drive and you have to earn it. And I've tried the fad diets. In the summer of 2017, I did keto. I was like keto carnivore. I lost 30 pounds. I went on vacation, went to Bulgaria with my wife, and we enjoyed Bulgaria. I don't know where I'm going to find carnivore friendly stuff in Bulgaria, in Varna. So it's like, and then at the same time, so I came back from that vacation. The 30 pounds came right back quicker than they came off. Later that year, end of 2017, I go down this rabbit hole. I didn't eat meat for like 2 months. I lost 15 pounds, and I felt like absolute garbage. My sleep was bad. Everything was bad. So that didn't work. And it's about what is sustainable for the rest of your life. So the energy and again, so good on you for the energy drink thing. That's people think that they need to give something up in order to get what they want to achieve. I haven't given up. And when it comes to giving things up, you were ready to give up those energy drinks. I smoked cigarettes until August 1st, 2016, coming up on an anniversary. And I had to wait until I was ready. And I became ready when I met a guy I worked with who quit smoking by switching to a vape. I switched over to a vape, and then I got off the vape when another friend of mine, somebody I knew and trusted, they were like, yeah, man, I just started using sunflower seeds. And so that's what I did. And then I came off the vape completely. Until community and somebody I had something in common with gave me the confidence that I was able to quit it. But if somebody's losing weight, again, you don't need to. I've never given up ice cream, pizza, Terry Black's barbecue, any of those things. But in this era now, we have these better for you options. And unfortunately, with the internet, there's so much information that's out there of this is bad. I call it the ingredient Gestapo. There's people out there who are attacking, these ingredients. Oh, all these things with ingredients, they're actually what's killing you. And it's like, maybe there's merit to it. I don't know. I can't speak to it. But what I do know are the facts, which are when it comes to chronic disease, the chronic diseases drivers are suffering from, the reason why they're happening is not because of aspartame. It's not because of artificial sweeteners or the better for you or the ingredients in the protein bar. It's the visceral fat that's on your organs, and it is the lack of your body moving. Like those two things we know. And when you can solve those issues, those other chronic diseases and issues are probably not going to happen. I get a lot of that information from Peter Attia in his book Outlive. There is no restrictions on what people need to do. And I think that's where they get defeated, is where they think they're going to have to give something they love up and it's just not true. It just has to do with doing it a little bit less, just doing a little bit less, or just in a smaller amount at different times. Like you said, you didn't give it up. You said once every 3 days you'll enjoy an energy drink.
Yep.
And it's like, so that self-defeating mindset right there of I'm going to have to give something up. And then same thing with the failure. Like I let like the keto thing, like that was logged as a failure. And just because you tried, again, there's people who fail at businesses. How many books do we read from entrepreneurs who've gone bankrupt and this at XYZ, who ended up inventing that, who invented something? I think that's a Thomas Edison quote. You look at what some of these people have done, like failure is a part of the process.
Yeah.
Like failure is a part of the process. That's how you learn. You learn by failing. That's in everything. Nobody's a perfect test taker. Nobody's perfect at it. You've got to learn.
Me. Definitely
You've
not
got to
me.
get that experience.
Well, look, guys, I would, first of all, I'd say this. I would talk to you guys for hours and hours and hours on end. That's one thing I want to say. We are coming up against a hard out here because you both, I know that you've got other things to do, so I want to work in our final thoughts here real quick. But something you guys said about the fads, I just had to say, I don't know if I think I'm a little bit older than you guys, but you remember in like the late 90s when all of a sudden eggs were bad? and it was eggs have cholesterol. Could you imagine if the damn internet was around when eggs were bad? I mean, nobody would be eating eggs right now. They would be probably in that kind of weird price flux that they just were during the tariffs. It's like we wouldn't have chickens. I don't know. Strange thought, rabbit hole type shit. We'll get into it next time. But I appreciate both of you guys coming on. Michael, I appreciate you telling your story. Mark, as always, we love having you on. Great insight. And I love being able to actually have somebody tell a story and have you kind of add your commentary in and talk about the things you think he did right. As always, we'll make some room for final thoughts here before we got to let you go. Mark, I'll come to you first. Final thoughts for us before we let you go here on the Liquid Trucking Podcast today.
Yeah, I mean, I think someone listening to this, don't let this inspiration or this example of Michael and some of the tips that you've heard today go to waste. And, one step in the right direction is a step forward, right? And all these journeys, all of Michael's marathons or Ironman started with one step, and that's very motivational hearing. But I think it's really necessary for someone, and I think the bigger piece of it is to really narrow down, that identity and saying, look, do I want to be part of currently the statistics in trucking of the path that a lot of drivers go down, or do I want to be someone who loves trucking, shows up, works hard, but also shows up for myself and my family, for my health? And that's really the community that Lombard, me, and Project 61 is creating within the industry, is drivers who are like, I'm done with the status quo. I love my career. Trucking's not the problem. It's the identity and some of the environment and community that's built within the driver community. And we want to start shifting that to say, hey, you can be healthy and be a driver and live best of both worlds.
Absolutely. Well, Mark, thank you so much for joining us today. If you're interested in finding out more about what, I did lie earlier, I'm going to do it twice, about what Dr. Mark Manera has going on over, you can check it out over at offshift.ai. Great stuff there. Plenty to learn. Always a fantastic resource for this podcast. Thank you so much for being here with us today.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
And final thoughts for you, Michael. Again, thank you for telling us your story, and anything else to offer our drivers before we let you go today?
Yeah, number one, first and foremost, definitely follow up with Dr. Mark Manera and what we've got coming very soon that we can't wait to talk about, especially when it comes to community. Number two, for any driver out there, I have offered this to anybody. I will coach a driver absolutely for free. If they get me their macros, I can write them a blueprint on exactly what they need to do. And if they can follow those steps, I'll check in with them as often as they want. I'll give them any of the attention they need. I've offered that. And I will also pay for their first 5K or half marathon or any race they want to do. I will do that in a heartbeat. So if anybody really wants some one-on-one, you can find me anywhere at Lombard Trucking. And the last real final thoughts on this are, I think I say this time and time again, American truck drivers and truck drivers themselves, it's the most patriotic job in the country. It's the backbone of this country. Again, I grew up with somebody like my grandfather, a business. My family's business was the dawn of the trucking industry. We talked beforehand where it went from horse and carriage to trucks, and I have so much respect for the drivers of this country. I respect drivers more than a lot of other people in other positions. I respect the trucker the same way I respect the CEO in different aspects. I think drivers are some of the most intelligent people out there, problem solvers and everything. The thing is, and what makes truckers so great is their sacrifice. And, whenever you talk to any driver, they'll do anything. And this is just my message to drivers. You'll do anything for your family. You're doing an honest day's work to provide for your family. You'll do anything for them. I hear it a lot of times. People say, I would give anything for my family. I would die for my family. We don't live in that era anymore. Nobody's asking you to die for them, but can you just live for them?
Well said. Very poignant and very impactful as well. And I would like to offer this to any of our liquid trucking drivers listening. If you want to take Michael up on his offer and start this journey and get healthier, I'll facilitate contact too. You can reach out to me as well. I'm in touch with Michael. I would love to just be a catalyst for good and healthy drivers out there. Dr. Mark Manera from Offshift, Michael Lombard from Truck Parking Club. You guys have been phenomenal today, and I know we got some exciting news that we had to be tight-lipped about today. We'll get you back on soon and talk about that. All right, fellas?
Sounds great.
Awesome.
Thank you so much, guys. Have a great day. We appreciate you here on the Liquid Trucking Podcast. We'll be right back. Huge thanks to Michael and Mark for stopping by the show. Those guys don't have to share their time with us, just like the drivers that get on this show don't have to share their time with us. So we're always very grateful here on the podcast when we have somebody come on and tell a powerful, moving story like Michael just did. It's not always easy to talk about how you were before you got to the point that you were at. Sometimes that can be pretty humbling. And I really appreciate Michael for, talking right through that and letting us know. I mean, hey, he was mentioning weights, okay? He was saying, I weighed this much. I know, I don't even want to tell you guys how much I weigh right now for multiple reasons. One, sometimes it's been told to me that my voice doesn't suggest that I'm the size that I am. I've had people tell me they listen to me and think that I'm 6'4" in khakis. I love what that says about my voice. I hate what it says about my stature at 5'9" and 185 pounds, maybe a 190. I've tipped the scales at 2 bills before. There, I said it. I've laid myself bare here on the Liquid Trucking Podcast for all to hear. But you know what? I'm off the energy drinks. At least I'm off of them for, 3-4 days a week, and I'm making progress, and that's what it's all about. If you listen to Michael's story and you listen to the insight that Dr. Mark added, as well as some of the old interviews that I've done with Dr. Mark, what you'll hear is that they've figured this thing out, and it really will work. Baby steps. You know what? If running for 10 minutes sucks, let's go run for 5. If running for 5 minutes sucks, then let's walk for 5. Let's start somewhere. Let's kick the ball down the hill. Let's have a carrot instead of a Snickers. Let's have water instead of Coca-Cola. Let's mix in some zero sugar sodas to these full sugar pops that we get. Mountain Dew. I love a good Mountain Dew, man, but I'll tell you right now, it turns my insides all sorts of colors, and I just can't do it anymore. So I found the Zero Sugar Baja Blast. They even have it at Taco Bell, which I also shouldn't be eating, but I do. It's a guilty pleasure. Sue me. Zero Sugar Soda, it's a great way to go, man. And I do worry. I know that caffeine is a big part of what you guys do out there, but having that friend of a friend pass away and kind of have it being blamed on energy drinks, I'll be honest with you, it really kind of hit me right in the center of the chest. And I'm going to make a change. I'm committed to making that change. I have to, man. I just committed to you guys to do 1,000 episodes of this podcast, and we're 9% of the way through it as of the end of today. So we've got a lot of road out in front of us, but don't you worry. I'll be healthy. I'll be here for it. Thank you all so much for joining us here today on episode 90 of the Liquid Trucking Podcast. We are already running out of time because that interview, I just couldn't stop it. In fact, that interview would still be going on right now if Mark and Michael didn't have a hard time that they had to get out of here. And really looking forward to the next time we bring them on the show. It's going to be a fun one. So thanks to those guys. Again, thank you to all you drivers out there. Don't forget to get your suggestions into me for the 100th episode of the Liquid Trucking Podcast. You can hit me at podcast@liquidtrucking.com or navigate over to the website podcast.liquidtrucking.com and find me that way. Of course, if you've got my number, hit me right in the pocket. You drivers stay safe out there. Keep the shiny side up until next week. This has been the Liquid Trucking Podcast, and I have done an okay job at being Marcus.
Thanks for tuning in and being the gold standard of drivers on the road. Be sure to like and subscribe to the channel and tune in next week for another episode of the Liquid Trucking Podcast.
Interested in finding out more about what it takes to bring a podcast like the Liquid Trucking Podcast to your fleet? Bulldog provides tailor-made, top-to-bottom podcast production services. We'll meet your terminal staff, connect with your drivers, and bring you the content you want your drivers to hear. Type bulldog.works into your browser to connect with us and learn more about what we can do for your fleet. That's bulldog.works for podcasts, tenacious recruiting, and more.